this week's episode of Gangsta, a soiree is underway at the Cristiano's nightclub, Bastard. The Benria are hunting down the anti-Twilights, and Alex gets up on stage to melt our hearts. This week's episode of Gangsta was surprisingly heartwarming and a really well done episode, despite the fact that the animation and the artwork really wasn't anything to write home about. Luckily, this is a series which is driven by its characters, which all happen to be really interesting. In this week's episode, we finally got to learn a little bit more about Alex Benedetto, who's more than just a pretty face. She has a pretty interesting backstory, and apparently she had a brother, who they're not really getting into quite yet, but he is formally introduced into this week's episode in what might be the mother of all coincidences, because Alex mentions that she did have a younger brother, she always looked out for him because they had no parents, and then it seems like right after this, her brother is coming right back into town. He was one of the guards or one of the people who was at the other gates. We're still going to have to learn a little bit more about this guy, but still, it's a very ominous build-up to this character. I'm sure he's going to be very, very important in the series. But the first half of the episode is just getting to see the Benria, the handyman, just working for that one girl by the name of Constance, otherwise known as Connie, and they're doing a little bit of construction for her, and this is also when we get to see her meet Alex for the very first time, where she talks about her brother, and continues to have these freaky weird images of her old boss Barry. It's not until the second half of the episode that things start to get really interesting, when they're getting ready to plan this big party, this soiree, which is not exactly a party, but it's more of like a safe haven, or like a sanctuary for Twilights to go to, because there's all these anti-Twilight groups in the city who are hunting them down and killing them, and then of course you have that creepy group of Mikhail and frickin' Erica, who are just watching from the rooftops getting ready to decapitate any Twilight that they can find, and it's only a matter of time before they have their big confrontation with the handymen themselves. Another thing that I really liked about this episode is that little by little we're starting to learn about the big families and mafia groups that are actually running the city of Ergastelum. Case in point, we have the character of Loretta Cristiano Omadio, who is actually the little girl who runs this big nightclub, and she's running it for her late father. She still has her two badass guards who have a lot of funny moments in this week's episode, but she's just a pistol of a character. She just seems like she's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see some more interactions with her. When she actually meets Alex for the first time, and it's not just her in this week's episode, everybody is just completely entranced by Alex's rack. Despite her very good looks, she also happens to be a very good singer, and there's this very nice scene at the end of the episode where you have the handymen who are actually fighting against these anti-Twilight guys, trying to corral these other Twilights into the club, while Alex is singing this song that she used to sing to her brother all the time. The lyrics of the song also happen to go with kind of what's going on in the episode as well, and it's definitely one of the more poignant, nice little scenes that I've seen from the series. Really, this was sort of like the calm before the storm. That's what this entire episode felt like to me, because you have Mikhail, and you have Erica, you have Alex's brother getting ready to come back in town, and of course there's a lot of tension brewing amongst the big families of the city. In particular, the Cristianos, because they seem like they're on their last leg. They don't seem to have a lot of money, they're doing every single thing they can to try and help out the Twilights, and they're also responsible for their survival. A really big key fact that we learned from this week's episode. Otherwise, that's all about it. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Gangsta? This was a nice episode that just made me feel good, and I didn't expect that from a series like this, which can go into some surprisingly dark territory, but again, this is a series which is, again, driven by its characters, which are all really interesting, and they seem to have some really nice backstories. Something else that I just really love about this episode, and this is something that sort of changed from the last one, is just getting to view Nicholas and Warwick's relationship, now that we learn actually how everything went down with Warwick's family being killed. They seem to have like a buddy-buddy, almost brotherly-like relationship, but I can imagine this coming to a head much later in the series and probably more towards the finale. Despite the fact that this series does have some dark undertones, though, this series actually gave us a little bit of comedy, especially from some of these side characters, in a few moments which were distinctly anime, if you know what I mean. In fact, that very first scene where Alex actually meets Connie for the very first time was probably the most over-the-top, goofy anime scene that we've seen from the episode, and that's because Connie just decided to cop a feel right there. She just could not believe that Alex's boobs were real. Even her face changed into something which looked like something from Full Metal Alchemist. It kind of took me out of the experience a little bit, but honestly, little moments like that I think are what's going to make this episode a little more memorable. That and of course getting to learn about one of the key figures, of course Loretta herself, who seems like she's not as bad as the other Mafia family. She actually seems like she has a good head on her shoulders, and she's genuinely actually trying to help out these Twilights by actually creating something of a sanctuary for them. In terms of the technical side of things, animation, artwork, really nothing to write home about in this week's episode. There were a few scenes that look good, and there were a few scenes that look just okay. This was just sort of a nice, calm episode, but still, it was a pretty good one that any Gangsta fan should definitely check out because it's got a little bit of mystery, intrigue, and some very nice, heartwarming moments. So check it out, Gangsta fans. If you're reading the manga version, or you're just jumping into the anime, check out this week's episode. You might see something you like. Before you guys leave today, I want to hear from you. Please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Gangsta. Did you guys have a favorite scene from this week's episode? What did you think of Alex's musical number? Do you think her brother is going to be a very important player in this current arc? Do you think he has some sort of connection to Mikhail and Erica? What do you want to see from the rest of the Gangsta anime series? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. You guys should also check out our weekly podcast show. It's called The Powerful Nerdcast. You can definitely check it out on our channel, and you can download the show for free at iTunes and at RogueIntel.com. So thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.